I hope everybody's really excited for Kansas City in, I guess, a week and a half. So this is the Early Career Blueprint series. So it's a lecture series that talks about important topics such as interviewing and how to prepare for a conference. It's geared towards early career physicians, and we've had a lot of residents, fellows, and trainees attend as well. So we're kind of catering to that audience as well. So I'm Caitlyn Mooney. I started this series a couple years ago now. I'm currently at Vanderbilt University, and I'm assistant professor here. And I take care of track and field, cheer and dance, and then now women's soccer here. And I'm also a med school educator as well here at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. So here today, I also have Carly Day. So Dr. Day is the head team physician for Purdue University Athletics. She's from Cleveland, Ohio, and graduated from Miami University. She completed medical school and a PM&R residency at the University of Virginia and was inducted into the AOA Medical Society. Dr. Day did her sports medicine fellowship at the University of Utah and worked at the Cleveland Clinic for 7 years prior to starting at Purdue. She was also a member of the National Collegiate Athletics Association COVID-19 Medical Advisory Group and is a team physician for the United States Soccer Under-20 Women's National Team. Her research interests include mental health, sleep, and iron deficiency in collegiate athletes, as well as gender and racial diversity in sports medicine physicians. And we're very lucky to have Dr. Day here today, and she is also the incoming president of the AMSSM. We also have Dr. Will Denq here, who is an associate professor of emergency medicine at the University of Arizona, and he's a team physician for U.S. ski and snowboard and U.S. swimming team. For the past 5 years, Will has been on the program planning committee for the annual meeting, and this year is even more involved as he's the moderator of moderators. At the annual meeting, he typically teaches at the ultrasound pre-conference and at the SIM Olympics, which he created. And he also serves as the co-chair of the Presidential Task Force, which is involved with the recent AMSSM IT overhaul. So thank you very much, Dr. Denq and Dr. Day. Our topic today is making the most of the annual meeting. So here's who will be talking today, and we already went through our introductions. So just for an introduction on what the Early Career Blueprint series is, we're somewhat under the umbrella of the Women in Leadership Lead. Our initial goal was to do topics that are pertinent to women in medicine, but we also welcome all people, and we have had a great audience of early career physicians who throughout trainees, as well as women, men, and all sorts of people. Our current goal is just topics that are pertinent to early career AMSSM members, as well as residents and fellows. So one of the most important things to think about when you're preparing for the meeting is what is your individual goals for the meeting. So me going as somebody who has a job, who is not looking for a current job, might be different as someone coming out of fellowship who's looking for a new job. So my goal might be to network, to find somebody to collaborate on a research project with, whereas somebody else's goal might be to meet someone to find a job, or even network with people who are involved in fellowship programs, because maybe next year that person wants to match in a fellowship. So determining your individual goals is very important before you go to a conference. So whether that's networking, it might be even just figuring out if sports medicine is the right career for you, finding a job, finding collaborators, or even just finding a way to get more involved in the AMSSM or other organizations is important, and also building relationships within the field. Before going to a meeting, looking at the program can be very important, trying to figure out what sessions you wish to attend, and maybe if you want to meet certain people, figure out where that might be. I also think it's a great place to practice networking as well as to actually network and meet other people. If you are thinking of looking for a job or interested in a fellowship, it might be a good idea to prepare your CV and consider bringing copies or even a QR code to link to it. I also think thinking about your goals, preparing an elevator pitch or a short talk on who you are and what your goals are, that would be under about 3 sentences, can be really important. And I have another slide on that. And also setting a reminder in your phone to follow up after the meeting is really important. So taking a look at the program of all of the great things that will be happening at the national conference is good to do, whether you're on the plane or even this week. I wanted to talk a little bit about what to wear. In general, AMSSM is very casual. If you're going to a different conference, you might want to bring more elevated clothing, but I would describe AMSSM as being business casual to elevated athletic. Period. Also, wearing clothes that you are comfortable in is very important, and comfortable shoes to walk in so that you can make the most out of your experience. A quick introduction to what is networking. We have other videos if you want to look at previous early career blueprint series, all on networking and building different types of relationships. But in short, networking is building your personal network or group of people within your field. So this is building professional relationships. These could be casual relationships or formal mentors, coaches, and sponsors. And I always think of networking as building mutually beneficial relationships. And just like any relationship, most of these grow with time. Networks can help us find jobs, obtain new patients, or find people to work on projects with, and can also help with promotions. And I also like to think about networking as in a positive light, because I know sometimes it has a negative light. So it's ultimately about relationships. It's not just transactional, as in I need something from somebody, so I'm going to network with them. Just like you might think that going to meet somebody who's more senior is only beneficial to you, other people do gain from relationships and having trainees involved in projects and other things. So networking is not about just connecting people, it's about connecting people with people and people with ideas and people with opportunities. I just wanted to address some of the negative connotations. So sometimes people think networking is just transactional or manipulative because people are going to look for having a relationship in a superficial way. But ultimately, we are a social species, and our work is also very social based in medicine. And you're not going to exist on an island. So everybody benefits from having relationships with other people. And it also helps with the spread of ideas. I know some people in AMSSM talk about how they were just having dinner and they came up with a great research idea that then brought into a project and really elevated research. I think one of those would be how some people are working on research on sports bras. So all of those ideas wouldn't exist if we didn't have a network. So I always frame this as a tool or for career success and support. So a quick introduction to the elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is just a very short, max 3 sentences of who you are. So it should be who you are, what you do, and then maybe why that other person should care. On the flip side, if you're thinking about a specific project that you want help with, it could be who you are, what you do, and what is this thing that you want to tell somebody about. And I think kind of thinking about that before you get to the conference can be very helpful so that you're not stuck trying to introduce yourself in the heat of the moment and trying to think of what you want to say to somebody. And some other things to think about is just like any relationship you probably had in your life, professional relationships also need maintenance. So thinking about making sure that you plan to follow up with these people that are in your network whether that's virtually or in person over time. Some simple things like wishing them a happy birthday, sending them thank you messages for help can really go a long way. After the conference, it's really important to follow up with the people that you meet at the conference. So some ideas would be about 1 week post-conference. If you met with industry reps, maybe follow up with them. Make sure you fill out your CME credit form if you need to. Looking at lectures, possibly contacting speakers. You can also congratulate anybody that you know that maybe gave a good talk, and respond to or send any messages in the app for the conference before before people stop looking at that, and then looking into any collaborate groups which are online to see about any ideas or projects that were generated during the conference, and maybe list the people you want to follow up with before, and ideally that would be before you leave the conference, and forget why you want to follow up with them. And then 1 month after, because you don't want to follow up too soon because people get back into town, they have to do their laundry, do all those things. Probably within the next month, follow up with any mentors or new contacts that you made that you want to touch base with. Maybe even reach out to the people you wanted to see at AMSSM, but you didn't get a chance to. Thank people for any opportunities that you were given at the meeting, and then express interest in projects or volunteer to help with projects that you might have heard about at the meeting. Other ideas would be to connect with people on social media, look into some of the other great AMSSM information from the YouTube channel or our podcast as well. So here's a quick timeline on following up afterwards, and also making sure that you check in throughout the year with any contacts that are important to you. Not everybody do you have to stay in frequent contact, but if you're maybe have a formal mentorship, you might want to think about periodically staying into contact with them throughout the year. And then I wanted to highlight some of the excellent networking opportunities at the conference this year. So these are just from me looking through the brochure, but we have the service project on April 22nd, which is a great way to meet other people because you're working with them. The welcome reception, the fellowship fair, the foundation party, and keep in mind that there is a donation required for that. You could always schedule to meet with somebody at the refreshment breaks. A great way to talk to a fellow would be the Ask a Fellow table. And also it's always good to meet other people through interest groups or committee meetings, and that's a great way to get involved. I often say that a great way to meet people is to get involved in a project. So I highlighted those two because those are ways that you can get further involved with the AMSSM. I also wanted to highlight that you shouldn't underestimate meeting peers or people in your own level of training. These are people that you often stay in contact with long term. They might not be a formal mentor relationship, but often the people that you text with and have shared experiences with as you go on throughout your career. And they're great people to strategize with or problem solve about your job and ask things that you might not be comfortable discussing with formal mentors. So even if you get time to meet new people who might be in the same level of training as you, those are great people to meet as well. And then I also wanted to finally acknowledge, I know that conferences can be anxiety provoking, but I do think that meeting other people at conferences is a worthy endeavor. I think it's also a skill that you can develop over time. So if you're feeling that going to a conference is very anxiety provoking, maybe start with small goals of meeting people in a smaller environment, or just say replace an email follow-up with, hey, let's meet for coffee downstairs before X lecture, and then go from there. Also, some good ideas for making it a little bit less anxiety provoking is if you become an expert in something, or work on a committee, other people might come up to you. And then also just let any imperfect encounters roll off your back, kind of like this duck with the water. And don't focus on any imperfect social encounters that happened while you're at a meeting. Everybody has things like that happen. And then also one of the great ways to really interact with people in a way that's not quite as anxiety provoking is to promote others. So following up with people and congratulating them on something via email is a great way to reach out to people. And even if you aren't real big into talking, listening goes a long way. So now I will kind of open, that's the end of our slide. So I kind of open it up to our panel to discuss other ways that they think we can prepare for our national conference, whether this is your first conference, your second conference, or your third conference. These are all things that we can improve on. So, and I wanted to also highlight that I'm going to open it up, and then eventually I'm going to open up to question and answers as well. I will have one set of question and answers for anybody who feels comfortable asking a question while we're still recording. And then before the end of the night, I will turn that off just in case some people have some questions that they don't feel comfortable being on YouTube at the end, as these are the first part is recorded and put on YouTube. And please check list any questions you have in the chat to the side. So do I have Will here too? Dr. Den. There we are.
I am so sorry. I don't know what's going on with this, but I'm gonna fix my lighting.
I was gonna say, is that a thunderstorm?
Don't worry about the thunderstorm, guys.
So Caitlyn, I can start off and give a few thoughts just after watching what you said. So hello everybody, Carly Day. So I love the annual meeting. I'll throw that out. I always look forward to every year. I'm always exhausted afterwards, but it's such a good time. I really try to pack in as much as I can and figure I'll rest later. A few things that I think about. One is, in addition to all the networking, is really trying to learn something. So even though I'm getting old, I still learn something every year. And what I typically do is, if you're someone who takes notes, some people write it down, put it in your computer. What I really try to do, because again, a lot of times you go back and you just forget, like you get busy, you don't look back at your notes. So what I'll try to do at the end of every annual meeting is just think of 2 or 3 action items that I will take back to my work. So it might be, oh, you know what? That was a good concussion talk. One of my action items is I'm going to go back through my concussion protocol and double check that we included whatever. That's something that someone mentioned that I was like, oh, is that in there or not? Or someone brings up a couple articles or a topic that's really good, and I'll say my to-do list could just be to go rewatch that talk if I got distracted during it, or read the articles that they mentioned. So it's like you can't do everything. So I do try to write notes down. Sometimes they're just tidbits to remind me, but I try to think of a couple things that I will actually do when I get back, and I'll put it, either in my phone or in a to-do list that I'll look back on, just so I can feel like I really had a take-home piece of it. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The second thing is, as I have been around a long time and gotten to know a lot of people older than me, my age, younger than me, I feel like I know a lot of people there. So what I would recommend is, if you've talked to someone who maybe is higher up in AMSSM, or you've emailed with them once, or you met them last year, if you're gonna say hi to them again, I always say give a little reminder of who you are, because sometimes people come up to me and I know I've met them, but I can't remember where. So it's really helpful if someone comes up and says, hey, Dr. Day, it's so-and-so. Remember the fellow from UCLA we talked last year at the foundation party about how you were really interested in, female athletes. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, how have you been doing? And it just makes it a little easier for me than me trying to remember a lot of people. So those are my 2 tips that I thought of off the top of my head.
I love that, because I think when I first started going to AMSSM, you want to learn so much. And I feel like the 2 to 3 things that you can take back and really think about and change is so important, as opposed to getting overwhelmed by just the sheer quantity of everything going on. And I do like the reminder, because I think it puts everybody back in the place, and you get so much more out of the discussion than trying to have someone place you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like the point about trying to keep things small is a good idea, because the annual meeting is so big that like there's just no way to go to all of it or to try and absorb all of it. Like Carly and I and Andy like spent God knows how long putting this meeting together with the program planning committee, and like I don't remember what's going on in some of the days, and it's difficult to even do that. So having an agenda going in can be very helpful, but also understanding that like you're going to be a lot more energized when you're there, just because from the sheer fact that everyone's so nice and everyone's so kind that you want to participate more, but taking time for yourself to kind of like rehash what's actually happened. Make sure you set time aside, keep it open so that you can take some time to network, but don't fill it up necessarily full of lectures is a good idea, I think. And I really enjoy the small group aspect of things. So if there's a particular topic that you enjoy, try and find those subcommittees that Caitlyn was mentioning kind of at the committee meetings, where if you're working in a group of 4 or 5 people, you're going to be able to kind of have a lot more real conversations and kind of more in-depth conversations and connect on a more personal level. And that's what I really love about AMSSM is the people are awesome. Like we just have really good members and really, really passionate people, and connecting on that deeper level is always really nice and a great way for you to be memorable. And so having that strategy, I think, can be particularly helpful too.
I'll go to the first question in a second, but I had another question for you guys. Would you agree with what I said with how to dress for AMSSM?
Yeah, I think everyone has their own style, but I always wear comfy sneakers. So I could be in a dress or anything, but there's always running back and forth. So I do have my dress sneakers, as I call them, on. If you're presenting, sometimes we'll dress a little fancier and get a suit on. But it's always whatever mood I'm in. Sometimes I got dresses, sometimes I have leggings. It's just whatever is good for you. I don't think people judge a lot of people based on clothes, which is really nice. So obviously if you're presenting a poster, dress up for that, but I think just be you and make sure it's appropriate. It's always cold in the convention center, so always bring a cardigan, or a sweatshirt or a long sleeve. That's about it. And someone posted about a polo. Yes, like 75% of people will be in polos, so you will blend in well.
The part about it being cold is so important too, because like you just sit there and then your body temperature just drops like by about 15 degrees and you're like, why am I shivering? I'm normally warm. Yeah, I love that.
Definitely bring a jacket. So I have a question from Milan Patel. I hope I pronounced that right. So Milan is a med student and found that a lot of what we discuss is applicable, but wants to know if there's any specific tips for students, such as how should a student approach networking and research compared to a physician or fellow?
Yeah, so first of all, I always say, like, congrats, you are ahead of where I was. So I will be president next year. My first annual meeting was when I was a fellow. So you're already ahead of a lot of people starting off nice and early. So that's great. We're happy to have you at the meeting. I think a few things. I think going to there are some things that are special for the trainees. Even if there's things that say like there's a fellows quiz bowl, you can go attend that. And there's some med student or trainee boot camp. So going to the things that are specific for trainees is good. I think that if you look in the morning, there are these things called ICLs, which are instructional course lectures, and they're usually smaller. There can be anywhere from 10 to 40 or 50 people attending those. And I think that makes it's a little easier, not feel like you're getting lost there. And often people will be open to talking afterwards. And yeah, so I think just taking advantage of all those things, going to the social event, having fun, mid school's hard. So if this is a week or, a half a week that you're taking away from it, make sure to have a good time and give yourself a break and do some social activities too.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to stay video off for a second because my silhouette makes me look like I am in witness protection for a second. So the other thing that really, I think what makes you successful is pursuing what you are most passionate about. So like, it's not like you have to go and like absolutely try and connect desperately for a research project because you think that's what you need for your CV. There are plenty of opportunities for you to submit things like case presentations and case abstracts instead of research abstracts, for example, in the following year. And so you could totally find a mentor who's willing to help you out with that. But to really pursue the things that catch your eye, and that's going to really kind of propel you forward. There's a lot of pre-conferences and things that I think are applicable for medical students, but scrolling through the scrolling through the program itself, I highly recommend just breaking out your days. Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, or Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, whenever you're there, highlighting one or two events that really catch your eye. Make one about like, hey, I want to learn information just for myself, but in the afternoon, I'm going to spend some time learning more about this and how do I network with that person about that. So it's always helpful if you have a specific interest, and if you guys put that in the chat, we can kind of direct you more towards like specific sessions or specific committees that would be particularly interesting to you, but otherwise we'll kind of talk in generalities, I feel. But that's kind of my initial thoughts. Sorry for my video problems.
I remember one of the first conferences I went to as I think a resident. I really wanted to make networking a priority for me because I was coming from a program that didn't have sports medicine. And I set myself a goal of introducing myself to like 3 or 4 people a day. And I picked them out somewhat beforehand, not all of them, but I picked out specific people, maybe 1 or 2, and then other people were just making sure that I went up and talked to somebody, as opposed, because it's so easy when you don't know somebody to just kind of fade into the background. And I knew if I wanted to match in fellowship that I wanted to meet people. So I made it a small goal, and I thought that was something that was actually really helpful for me because that wasn't something that came naturally to me either. So that was kind of what I did. And I made sure it was somebody that it was easier if it was someone I knew I had something in common with. One of the people I picked out was one of the doctors at Notre Dame while I was at Notre Dame, and I had seen him before. So just to say like, hey, I graduated from Notre Dame and you were my doctor at one point was one of them, and just other things. And so I made it kind of easy. That was, and everybody could have their own separate small goal, but I remember doing that before I got to the conference. Other things I'm thinking about, I think AMSSM has so many opportunities to be involved, even as a trainee, and trying to think about what you're interested in. And then also, if you go to the committee meetings, what is it that seems to be needed? Whether that's, I personally got involved in fellowship in the communications committee, and I mostly was social media initially, and that was something that I could really take hold of and actually do and make a contribution. And I found that I met a lot of people through doing that. But that doesn't mean social media is the only thing. If you were really into research, going to the research committee and seeing what you can be involved in as a med student would be helpful. Or if you look at some of the other groups, there's like emergency medicine group or pediatrics group or PM&R group, and trying to meet, if those are things that you're interested in, meeting people there and seeing if they have any projects that they need help from trainees in. is a great way to meet other people, because then you're kind of having an ongoing relationship with them throughout the year. Plus, you're kind of learning more about sports medicine by doing the project, and you're contributing.
Yeah, I'll echo that too. From an education committee standpoint, also, there's a lot to participate in there. There's a lot of content that everyone needs help with developing, and I personally found through training that I learned more as I wrote more content, and it was a really good way to kind of further my own education and learn how to write appropriately in an academic sense. And it really took me into the ability to start publishing in journals and stuff. So kind of starting from ground up in that sense is also something that I found to be particularly helpful.
We have another question from Jessica Yee, which is, what is the best way to get involved with committees?
Yeah, so first remember, so committees, you just show up and you're on the committee. That's the best thing about AMSSM. There's no application to join a committee. You will see it in the program and show up, and a lot of times they'll either have like a QR code to sign in or some sort of sign-in sheet. So find a topic you're interested in and you just show up. So that's one. Then when you're there, sometimes they will specifically ask for volunteers, or if you're on the email group, again, let's say there's a QR code or something to sign in, sometimes afterwards they'll send out a message asking for helpers. And, you know, ironically, I too started with the communications committee. And I think a lot of times, like, the people who have been on the committees for a while, or are vice chairs or subcommittee chairs, like, they're usually very busy people. And I just volunteered to write press releases. And the first couple years, like when I was a fellow in the first year of fellowship, they just gave me speakers that were about to talk. And I just like looked up their bio and wrote a press release. But it's like I did it. I was reliable. They asked if I could do it, and I would respond right away and say, yes, I will do it. I will get it to you in 3 days. And then I wrote it and I sent it to them. And reliability, anytime you volunteer to do something, you know, be reliable, answer your emails. And those are the people I remember, because now as I lead things, when I'm choosing people to work with, you can be as smart as the smartest person in the world, but if you're not going to get back to me, I can't have you as someone on my committee or my task force. So being really reliable, if you choose to do something, communicate. If you're busy, if you're a trainee and something happened, communicating that. Quick email, hey, I know this is due tomorrow. I got, you know, I'm on call tonight, but I will get it to you by this Sunday. And usually that is fine as well. So just being over communicative, volunteering when people ask for it, and usually there are a lot of opportunities.
I've also found that, I think when I was in training, there was sometimes I couldn't make a committee meeting, and also last year I got gastro during all the meetings, and I just emailed people afterwards and said, like, I couldn't come, and everybody still will let you on their committee even if you can't attend the meeting.
Yeah, I just put the times in the chat as well for the committee meetings. And the other one that I think we talked about also are special interest group breakouts, because if let's say you're a medical student, you're interested in a specific residency, that's the time to kind of show up there, because you're going to also kind of get a feel for the people who are in that specific specialty. If it's emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics, PM&R, there's the ability to kind of go through there. And then when you're in there, at least for emergency medicine, that's where my specialty training comes from. We break out into specific other interests. So like education, or if we're breaking out into research, advocacy, whatever it may be. And then you can kind of pursue your interests further that way and get to meet some like-minded people, and kind of create a network from there. And it's from people all over the country, which is really cool.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna get one more question, and then I'll probably stop the recording, and then I'll let everybody also hopefully introduce themselves so that we can kind of also meet other people in this small room. So Ahmed says, as a PGY1, what other objectives should you have at the conference other than networking and exploring fellowship programs?
So first, as far as the Exploring Fellowship programs, which I know you said what else, but there is a fellowship fair, and if you're there during that time, anyone can attend. So it's never too early just to walk around, right? You know, and meet people, get vibes from the program. A lot of times their current fellows will be there, so you can ask them how everything's going. So I would take advantage of that. Other objectives, it's really up to you, right? So it's like, this is your time that you are taking away from family, if you have it, from school, from, whatever, from training. So really whatever's most important to you. So if you're really into research, man, go to as many research presentations as you can, go to all the posters, introduce yourself for research mentors. If you're not into that and you're really into sports coverage and you want to meet some of the team docs, you want to meet some of the like Olympic and Paralympic docs, and track them down, that might be a better opportunity. And you can talk to them about how to get involved in, Olympic sport coverage. So it's really whatever's most interesting to you. And if you haven't quite settled in yet on what you're interested in, then that's where you sort of see what piques your interest, right? So I actually was someone who in residency just loved everything about sports medicine, and then slowly sort of got my way into really loving college sports and team coverage, team physician, administrative roles and some of that, but that came naturally. I didn't make that decision. It's just the information that I sort of was drawn to, after being around. So just make the best out of whatever seems to interest you.
I think there was an interesting ICL that was like a day in the life of a sports med physician as well.
That's another good point. ICLs are awesome. They're like a great way to be in a small group, but to learn some very specific things, but also some broader things like day in the life. I also put in the team position breakout sessions in there. You don't have to be a team position in the NCAA, for example, to experience what it's like just to hear people talk about it. There's some very interesting discussions that happen there. Same with the USOPC and professional, but also wanted to point your guys' attention towards like the number one industry sponsored lunch symposium. Like you get free lunch, which is nice, but also at the same time, there's some very specific topics. So for example, there's like ultrasound evaluation of the common foot and ankle injuries in runners. And you'll get some very interesting details about what that's like, as well as the clinical applications. So there's a lot of different opportunities that just because you feel like you might not fit in doesn't mean that you won't. People are incredibly welcoming here. And so it's not like there's no space for you just because you're not this or you're not that. It's all kind of like an experiential learning experience, which is nice.
Yeah, you're welcome to pretty much everything.